With the crisis in Puerto Rico and claims the U.S. government is not doing enough to help millions of people who are without food, water, and shelter after Hurricane Maria.
But the White House is pushing back against its critics tonight. KCON 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with the politics of disaster relief in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and there's plenty of it. Some people questioning the sense of urgency, on the part of the Trump administration in this case. It's been 8 days now since Hurricane Maria slammed into Puerto Rico, and the recovery effort appears to have been moving at a snail's pace so far. Now, today that started to change, but many Puerto Rican residents are wondering, what took you so long? Life in Puerto Rico these days often comes down to getting ice. So the lines like this one begin forming around midnight outside the San Juan ice plant. With no power, ice is a necessity to keep food and medications cool and safe. But today, like the past 4 days, they were told to go home. There is no ice. Maria Rosario says her family is at the breaking point.
I'm getting desperate. This is no way to live, really. They should bring us water, other supplies, because the kids keep asking.
On the 8th day since Hurricane Maria barreled through Puerto Rico, destroying nearly everything in its path, the survivors are getting angry, charging the government isn't doing enough to help them survive.
People are already finishing up their stacks of food. There's a lot of people in the community that are wondering if FEMA is going to come.
Ground zero is at the port of San Juan, where thousands of containers packed with goods are sitting in the sun and going nowhere. Not enough truck drivers available and not enough fuel to deliver the goods, frustrating the vice president of one of the biggest shipping companies.
The frustration of knowing that maybe right now, there's a person in need of medicine. That right now, babies, children don't have a bottle of water. And it's here. It's in Puerto Rico.
The mayor of Aguadilla talked with CBS News.
Do you need more help?
Of course I do. I need more help. I need FEMA. I need the coastal engineer. I need you that listening to me. We need help. But we're going to get out of this one. I'm sure that we will.
The suffering of American citizens, some of whom may be running out of time, sparked some heated debate in Washington about whether the Trump administration is responding to the crisis in Puerto Rico with the same sense of urgency that it responded to the post-hurricane suffering in Texas and Florida this month.
We need to move heaven and earth and do everything we can to assist the people who are suffering.
At its core, today, the short-term challenge in Puerto Rico is a logistical one. The supply chain, the logistical chain on the island is broken.
This administration's response has been inexcusably slow and ineffective.
At the White House Thursday, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said thousands of U.S. military and relief personnel are now hard at work in Puerto Rico.
10,000 federal government relief workers are there, including 7,200 troops, are now on the island and working tirelessly to get people what they need. They are also working to restore long-term power generation and distribution around the island.
Case in point, this platoon of U.S. Marines cutting a pathway in a national forest on the island, trying to get to a fallen cell phone tower. More than a week after Maria struck, Marines are still clearing roads, fallen trees, and mudslides, which crippled Puerto Rico's network of roads, further stalling the relief efforts.
You see us getting to critical infrastructure such as FAA towers. As soon as we can get those up, more life-saving aid can come in.
The first Marines landed on Puerto Rico 6 days ago, just 2 days after the hurricane. Fittingly enough, 2 government officials overseeing the U.S. relief effort had 2 entirely different answers on Thursday when asked if they were satisfied with their disaster response in Puerto Rico.
I am very satisfied. I know it's a hard storm to recover from, but the amount of progress that's been made, I know it is really a good news story in terms of our ability to reach people and the limited number of deaths that have taken place in such a devastating hurricane.
No, I'm not satisfied, because the fact is that we will not be satisfied until we stabilize the situation, which is why we work day in and day out, hour after hour, to try to alleviate this situation the best that we can.
Now, the Washington Post reports tonight that the U.S. response to an earthquake on the island of Haiti in 2010 was much more forceful than the response to Hurricane Maria on the American island of Puerto Rico, a territory of the United States. The paper says just 2 days after the Haiti earthquake, the Pentagon had 8,000 U.S. troops on the way, and within 2 weeks, 33 U.S. military ships and 22,000 troops had arrived to help in the relief effort, far exceeding what we've seen so far in Puerto Rico. Jeff, Lena, back to you.